Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if your personality really changes as you get older, or if you are pretty much stuck with who you are? Well, this fascinating new study dives deep into that very question, looking not just at the big personality traits we all know, but also at the smaller, more subtle aspects of our personalities. And it does it with thousands of people over 2 years, giving us a really detailed picture of how we stay the same and how we evolve. So, what is the big mystery here? Researchers have been studying personality development for ages, but a lot of the work focuses on just 5 broad categories of personality, and often with long gaps between when people are asked about themselves. This study wanted to get a closer look, examining changes in both the big 5 personality traits and much smaller, more specific traits over a shorter time frame. They wanted to see if different parts of our personality change at different times and in different ways, and how these changes compare to how much our life satisfaction and self-esteem change. Think of your personality like a tree. The big 5 traits are like the main trunk and branches, but then there are smaller leaves, twigs, and even the bark texture. This study looked at both the big branches and the smaller details. They followed about 4,500 people in Switzerland for 2 years, checking in with them every 6 months. One of the main problems they wanted to fix is that most studies look at personality at a really broad level, like just extroversion. But what about the smaller pieces of extroversion, like being enthusiastic versus being assertive? Do those change differently? Also, studies often check in every few years, but what if personality shifts happen more gradually, over months, not just years? And finally, how do personality changes stack up against changes in something like how happy we are or how we feel about ourselves? Are we more like a rock or more like a weather vane? To figure this out, the researchers used something called the Percival study, which collected information from a representative group of Swiss adults. This means they aimed to get a sample that mirrored the actual population of Switzerland in terms of age, gender, and where they live. Over 2 years, these participants took personality questionnaires 5 times. Each session spaced 6 months apart. They also answered questions about their life satisfaction and self-esteem. To analyze all this data, they used sophisticated statistical tools, but the core idea was to track how people's scores on different personality traits, and even smaller aspects of those traits, changed over time and how those changes related to their age. One of the first things they looked at was rank order stability. This sounds complicated, but it is basically asking if you were more extroverted than your friend at the beginning of the study, are you still more extroverted than them 2 years later? This is about your relative position in the group. And what they found was pretty consistent. Personality is quite stable, even over 2 years. On average, the rank order stability for both the big personality domains and the smaller aspects was around a very high 0.87 to 0.88 over 1 year. This means that who you are relative to others doesn't shift a whole lot in just a year. Interestingly, this stability was even a bit higher for personality traits than for life satisfaction and self-esteem. This suggests that while our feelings about our lives and ourselves might fluctuate a bit more, our core personality tendencies tend to stick around. They also found that personality traits were extremely stable over longer periods, like 2 years, with an average stability of 0.85. Now, they did see some age-related shifts in stability, particularly for traits like extroversion, openness, and conscientiousness. For these, stability was a bit lower in young adulthood and a bit higher in older adulthood. It seems like as we get older, our relative standing within the group on these traits becomes even more fixed. The next big question was about mean level changes. This is different from rank order stability. It is asking, does the average level of a trait change in the whole group over time? For example, does the average person in the study become more conscientious as they get older? What they found here is more nuanced. While there were some significant age-related differences in baseline trait levels, meaning people of different ages started out at different levels, there were actually limited mean level changes actually happening during the 2-year study period for most traits. This might sound a bit surprising, but it might mean that major mean level shifts in personality tend to happen over longer stretches of life, not necessarily within a 2-year window. However, and this is where it gets really interesting, they found that the smaller aspects of personality showed different patterns. For example, within the conscientiousness domain, one aspect called industriousness increased in its baseline levels from age 20 to 60, but then showed decreases across the study period. Another aspect, orderliness, showed stable baseline levels but increases during the study period. This highlights why looking at these finer details is so important. Two aspects within the same big domain can develop in quite different ways. They also found that the overall amount of mean level change across personality traits, life satisfaction, and self-esteem was pretty similar in magnitude. This goes against the idea that personality is some kind of rigid core, while things like life satisfaction are much more fluid. It seems like personality itself can shift on average, much like how we might feel about our lives. Finally, they looked at correlated changes. This is about whether changes in one trait are linked to changes in another. For instance, if someone becomes more conscientious over the 2 years, does that tend to happen at the same time they become more extroverted or more open to experience? The answer is yes, to some extent. They found medium-sized correlations between changes in different Big Five domains, suggesting that some common factors might be influencing multiple personality traits. Changes within the same big domain, like between two aspects of conscientiousness, were correlated even more strongly, averaging around 0.42. This indicates some interconnectedness in how our personality shifts. And this is a big but, they noted that the confidence intervals for these correlations were very wide. This means that while they saw a pattern, they couldn't be super precise about the exact strength of that connection. They suggest that in future research, we might need even larger sample sizes and more measurement points to get a clearer picture of these correlated changes. So, what does all this mean? This study really paints a more detailed picture of personality development. We learned that our personality, both the broad strokes and the finer details, is remarkably stable in terms of our rank order position relative to others. This stability extends even to older adulthood. While our relative positions tend to stay put, the average levels of some personality traits, and especially their smaller aspects, can change over time, and these changes can differ. This is crucial because it means personality isn't static for anyone, and different parts of our personality can evolve on their own timetables. The finding that aspects within the same domain can develop differently is a key takeaway. It really emphasizes that we need to go beyond just the 5 big categories to truly understand personality development. Imagine the car. Just saying it is a sedan is useful, but understanding how the engine, the brakes, and the steering wheel are performing individually gives you a much clearer picture of its overall condition and how it might change. Scroll fifth, 1-year rank, order stabilities of personality traits were, on average, higher than expected with R.85 to 0.93. Scroll the study also suggests that personality traits might be more stable than we think in terms of our relative rankings, but also more prone to mean level shifts than we might expect. It is a bit of a dual picture. We tend to stay in our relative personality lanes, but the speed limit in those lanes might change for everyone. Now, no study is perfect. This one was conducted in Switzerland, and cultural differences can play a big role in personality development. So, these findings might not apply everywhere in the world. Also, they relied on self-reports, meaning people were asked to describe themselves, which can sometimes be biased. Future research could use reports from friends or family too. And look at even longer time spans to see how these short-term changes add up over a lifetime. The 2-year duration is good for seeing some shifts, but long-term personality development likely unfolds over many more years. Overall, this research gives us a more detailed, granular view of how our personalities evolve. It confirms that personality is not fixed, and that even small specific aspects of it can change. It challenges us to think more deeply about what personality really is and how it shapes our lives. The next step will be to understand why these specific aspects change and what drives those shifts. Not just in Switzerland, but across the globe and over longer periods of our lives, it is really empowering to know that while we have a stable core, there is also room for growth and change throughout our lives in subtle but meaningful ways. It makes you wonder what small changes you might be experiencing right now, or what aspects of yourself you might nurture to see evolve. What do you think about these findings? Does it surprise you that the smaller aspects of personality can change differently? Let us know in the comments below what you think about personality stability and change. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please smash that like button, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more Science Decoded, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the human mind. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.